You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me.
Oh, hey friends, tonight is going to be really fun because I can't read my writing.
I think you should leave this part in.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, it's going to be fun tonight because I am inviting you to a little family story time with my daughter, Emma. So there's no need to fill you in on how I met this guest. Emma is my second born child, but my first married one. And Emma, I'm going to just ask you to introduce yourself, what year you got married, what your family looks like, and then we're going to jump back in time 2 years and share about Sawyer's birth and how God was at work in your family at that time. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Okay, so my husband and I got married in 2015, had our daughter Gwendolyn, who is now 4, in 2016. Then in 2019, had our son Sawyer. He's now 2. And then this past year, we had Finian, and he is 8 months old. So that's our family.
Yep. And those are my 3 precious little grandbabies that if you follow me on my Instagram, then you see from time to time their pictures. I am not near as good about sharing my Instagram as Emma is. And so if you want to see a closer up picture of those cute grandbabies, then you're going to find her at wherever is home is her Instagram handle. Okay, so take me back. Where does this story start with Sawyer's birth?
So Sawyer was born almost 2 months premature, and my husband Jed had been gone at training. He's in the military. He's in the Coast Guard. He'd been gone at training for about 3.5, almost 4 months. So at the end of my pregnancy with Sawyer, and we were getting ready to move from Oregon, where he was stationed, up to Alaska, where he was being sent next. Let's see. So Jed came home from that 3-4 months training on a Friday, and on Saturday night, I went into labor at 32 weeks pregnant with our son Sawyer, and got life flighted that night. Ended up holding out, had Sawyer via emergency C-section. About 5 days later, at 33 weeks, he spent a lot of time in the NICU when he was born. And then after the NICU stay, we finally got to bring him home, and then kind of jumped right in to get ready to move up to Alaska. So the Coast Guard was really generous and let us stay in Oregon longer than we were supposed to. They gave Jed a lot of time off work to be with Sawyer in the hospital. And then, but it was, we still had to move. So we had to move when Sawyer was just 7 weeks old up to Kodiak, Alaska, where we were being sent next. And so,
which that he was 7 weeks old, but he was 7 weeks premature. So he was right at what would have been his due date when you guys were transferred up to Alaska.
Right. Yeah. So we left up there. I think we were like a couple days before his due date, we got to Alaska. So as far as the doctors were concerned, with premature babies, they adjust their age. So he technically was adjusted. He was not born yet. So he was very little and very, very small and still very fragile at the time. And so anyway, we traveled up there, and after we had been there for about 2 or 3 days, Gwendolyn, who was 2 at the time, got a cold, which, traveling with toddlers, they get colds. And then Jed had to leave to join the boat. They were in maintenance, so he had to leave. So we had just moved there. We'd been there 5 days when Jed left, and I was in a hotel with 7-week-old Sawyer and 2-year-old Gwendolyn and our dog, and Jed was gone. Then on that 6th day, I noticed Sawyer starting to get sick as well.
So you took him to a regular doctor, right?
Right. So after we moved to Alaska, on the 5th day that we had been there, Jed had to leave to join the boat. They were doing some maintenance a ways away. And so he had to go there. So he left me behind with the 2 kids and the dog to go join the boat. And so after he'd been gone for like 2 days, Sawyer got the cold that Gwendolyn had. And at first, we just assumed it was just a cold and it would blow over. But the middle of the night, that first night, something with him just didn't seem right. It seemed like he was having too hard of a time breathing. And I decided in the morning to call the doctor and just see if they would be able to see him. We had just moved there at this point 6-7 days beforehand. I didn't anticipate them being able to see him, but I was hoping, given that he was a premature baby, that they would be able to get us in to see a doctor. And so the next morning I called them and was able to get him an appointment for that afternoon. And by the time the appointment was approaching, I was starting to just get really nervous because Sawyer was looking worse and worse. And I was just praying like, God, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like this is a big deal, and I feel like I need him seen, and I feel like I need him seen quick. It was one of those things where the clock couldn't move fast enough because I felt like I needed to get him in now, but also I didn't want to go walk into the emergency room and be, the crazy person who freaks out about the littlest thing if it was really just a cold. But there was this unsettling part of the whole thing that I couldn't get past. And so when it came time for his appointment, I loaded the kids up in the car and we drove into town. And as I was driving, I remember where I was on the road. I remember just praying and asking God, what do I do at this appointment? Because Sawyer, since he had been a premature baby, we had dealt with a lot of doctors and, doctors asking us, well, what do you want to do? And, giving us multiple options for treatment for him. And so I kind of was used to, taking him into the doctor and having them ask me what I wanted to do. And so, I was kind of going into this trying to think like, well, what do I want? Like, what is my desired outcome of this appointment? And I just kept praying and I was like, God, I don't know. And I was like, God, what do I do? And so I remember driving around this corner called Dead Man's, which is awful name, but it's a really horrible corner on a really bad cliff up in Alaska. And I remember as I came around that corner, I felt God give me the word advocate. And I remember just thinking, advocate, what does that mean? Advocate for what? And I just didn't know quite what it meant, but I just felt like I knew that God had given me that word. And so went into the doctor's appointment and they took him back and saw him and told me that, he was sick, but that they thought he would be okay if I took him home. And they had swabbed him while I was there for the flu and RSV, and the RSV had came back positive. So he had RSV, which if you've never had a little baby, RSV is respiratory syncytial, if that's how you say it. I hope that's how you say it, virus. It's a really common respiratory illness for little kids, but it really is detrimental to kids who have weakened immune systems, and Sawyer did. So anyway, they told me he had RSV and that I should just take him home, and if he got worse, bring him back. And that's when I asked the doctor if I could have a minute to think about it, if she wouldn't mind leaving the room. And so she left, and I was just sitting there, and I remember holding Sawyer and just praying and asking God, what do I do? Because I just didn't feel peace about taking Sawyer home. And again, I heard God give me the word advocate. And I was like, okay, so advocate, earlier I didn't know quite what it meant, but now sitting here in the doctor's office and not feeling a peace about going home and feeling God give me that word again, I need to advocate for something other than going home. So I am Sawyer's advocate. What can I do now to get him what he needs? And so I tried to call Jed, who was gone, and he didn't answer. And so, I was thinking, okay, I'll call him and see what his thoughts are. And he didn't answer. And so the doctor had come back in. She asked me what I wanted to do, if I was going to be okay to take him home. At the end of the doctor's appointment, they had all the paperwork drawn up for me to walk out the door. And they were like, you ready to take him home? And I looked at her and I said, I really don't feel like I can. And she was like, well, why? He's not that sick. Like, he's fine. His lungs sound clear enough. He'll be okay. If there's a problem, just bring him back. It's not that far. And I remember just tears coming to my eyes and just sitting there and just thinking again, like, I have to advocate for him. So what do I do? And I remember I just asked her, I just said, would there be any way that you could keep him here? Like, I know there's a hospital upstairs. Are you able to admit him? Is that something you could do? And she was like, well, he's not really sick enough for admission to the hospital. So, really, if he gets sicker, we would, but he's not sick enough. So she stepped out again. And at that point, I was able to call Jed, and he did answer. And I asked him what his thoughts were. And, he wasn't there. He hadn't seen Sawyer. And so he was like, well, why don't you just take him home if that's what they think is best? If they think he's not sick, then, just take him home. He'll heal better at home than he will in a hospital. He'll feel safer if he's home being held and stuff, which makes sense. And again, I just didn't feel a peace with that. So I kept praying, and I told Jed on the phone then, I said, but I feel God telling me I need to advocate for him, and I don't feel peace about taking him home. And that's when Jed said, well, if you're hearing God say something, if you're not feeling a peace about taking him home and you're hearing God tell you to advocate, then that you need to advocate for him not going home. So you do need to advocate for him staying. And so Jed was like, basically helped me sort out and really affirmed that what I was hearing, I needed to follow through with that, because I felt like I heard God saying this, but yet I didn't really know. I didn't have a good, this doctor saying he's safe to take him home. And I'm saying, I don't want to take him home because a voice in my head is telling me not to take him home. And so how do you explain to a doctor who is very scientific that you are hearing God speak to you when the doctor's just looking at him saying, no, he's fine?
And you're young, and you were brand new in town. You had no connections and no history with any of the doctors there in town for them to go look at anything either. So that's another hurdle.
And I don't think they had even gotten Sawyer's charts yet from our previous doctor. And so, yeah, they didn't know me. I was this young mom who just came in and traveled. I probably to her just came off as a mom, just a mom who's just worried about her baby, which is a normal mom thing to be. But I think that in that circumstance, she just didn't expect anything else other than me just being worried about my baby.
So you convinced them that he needed to stay, and they allowed him to stay. And then you went back to your, I can't remember, was it a hotel at this time or your house? But
yeah, so I basically was able to ask the doctor if he could stay. That doctor asked the doctor on call upstairs, who happened to be a Christian who we later went to church with, if he could stay. And the doctor on call upstairs said yes. And so I took him upstairs to the hospital, got him checked in and settled in the hospital, and admitted to be there overnight. This doctor who was on call upstairs checked us in up there, actually prayed with us that night, like that evening, as we were getting settled in with Sawyer. And then it took about 30-40 minutes to get him settled in. And then once he was settled in upstairs at the hospital, I took Gwendolyn home to grab the playpen and other suitcases and such so that we could stay the night in the hospital with Sawyer that night. And so our house was about 10-12 minutes away from the hospital. Well, I guess this wasn't our house at the time. It was our hotel. So I drove home to our hotel, packed a couple bags for Gwen and I to stay the night. And it was while I was at home that I got a phone call from the hospital saying, hey, we don't want to worry you. Are you on your way back? And I said, yes. I'm, putting the bags in the car. I'm on my way. What's going on? And they said, well, we've had to resuscitate Sawyer twice, and he's not doing well. We don't have the care he needs here because Kodiak, where we lived in Alaska, is an island. And so there was one hospital with very, very limited resources there. And they said, there's not the resources here to help him. We need to get him life flighted off quickly. We have already ordered the life flight. Can you sign the paperwork as soon as you're back? Because we need to get him off island now. And so, of course, I immediately, got all the rest of the bags, started driving to the hospital, got there, signed the paperwork, and we just waited for the life flight team. At this point, we had been on the island for 8 days. So we had just moved. We knew one person, the girl, her name is Elise, who picked me up or picked us all up, I guess, from the airport when we had moved there. And so I called her. That she was the only person on the entire island who I knew. I called her, and she actually happened to work at the hospital as a nurse, but I called her and said, hey, here's what's going on. I don't know what to do with our dog who's still at the hotel. And also I need help. Can you come to the hospital and sit with me and Gwen? The life flight's on their way. And so she came and helped us. And then, the life flight team came. Sawyer had to, while they were there, he had to be resuscitated one more time, which was really scary to actually, I'm grateful in a way that I wasn't there the 2 times he was resuscitated previously, because it was very traumatic, but he had to be resuscitated once while I was holding him in my arms. The life flight team had to help. I remember them taking him from me and resuscitating him with Gwen in the room. And, it was all a pretty intense ordeal. And we had just done the whole life flight thing, a month and a half beforehand when he was born. But that was different because that time he was just little and early versus this time he was very sick.
Well, the last time the first life flight, you were pregnant. So
right. The first life flight I was pregnant. So it was less worrisome than this time where he was here and he's sick and he's being resuscitated over and over again. And we're on an island with no care and we just need to get him off. And it's,
and your husband was on a boat.
And Jed was gone. And we were in a new place at a new city. We just moved states. We knew no one, had no support.
But you know how to pack a lot of bags really quick. And so we giggled because usually you just life flight the patient or the patient and the parent. But in your case, you could not leave your 2-year-old on an island with no one because you've not even met anybody. So you couldn't leave a 2-year-old with your husband on a boat somewhere else and you're getting life flighted with a baby. And so it was a little crazy. So I'm picturing you were like, we need to take the playpen on the life flight and we need to take this on the life flight. And so you came prepared and they life flighted you over to Anchorage.
Yeah, it was a pretty hilarious thing because the life flight team walks in the room and I'm sitting there explaining like, okay, well, I have a car seat for this. I have a car seat for my 2-year-old. That obviously has to go because she's going to need one when we get there. And then the car seat for the baby's got to go. And then I have this bag and this bag. And can we fit the playpen? And, we're just chatting all this. And the life flight team's thinking like, our little life flight is like a tiny little airplane. They're like, it seats like 4 and that's including the patient. And so it was pretty hilarious getting everything loaded and whatnot. But the life flight team was incredible. And that doctor who had helped admit Sawyer on the upper floor had prayed with us before we left, again, reminded us that he would continue praying for us. And so that was really encouraging. But we made it to Anchorage where Sawyer was able to get the care he needed. He spent about 3.5 weeks in the pediatric intensive care unit there, just battling RSV. And then some kidney and liver stuff. I don't even know what else. He had other stuff at the time, but it was a very eye-opening experience of just simply listening for God's voice, because had I taken Sawyer home when that doctor had told me to take him home, he wouldn't have been where he could be resuscitated when he needed to be resuscitated because, they had told me take him home. I had fought for not taking him home. And within about 2 hours from them saying, take him home, he'll be fine. In a time frame of about 2 hours, he had to be resuscitated twice and a life flight team was called. So, he went downhill really, really fast when he went downhill. He kind of went from looking fine to just like really emergent really fast. And so I'm very grateful that when I heard God speak that, I did listen, because it was a very weird thing to fight for at the time, given that he was seeming healthy to the doctor, given that, he would be more comfortable at home and, Gwendolyn would be more comfortable. All of us would be more comfortable home, meaning a hotel room, but, all of us would have been much more comfortable going back to the hotel than staying in a hospital overnight. So the fact that I wanted to fight for that just really was odd for the doctor. And I recognize that now. At the time, I was trying to figure out how to Like I knew so sure that God was telling me one thing. And so, to do anything else seemed so bizarre. But looking back, I can see where the doctor was like, he's fine. You don't need to, why are you stressing over this when he's fine? Yeah, that's pretty much how the story went. And I mean, that carried into our time in the PICU. I mean, we spent, 3.5 weeks with doctors in and out of his room, constantly asking us about different procedures and different medications for him, or, things for his comfort, just anything in the PICU. And that learning to advocate for Sawyer, I mean, it carried over into that whole experience too, because there was doctors that were asking us lots of questions nonstop the entire time we were there. And so we really had to pray over each decision and decide what tests we were going to do, which ones we felt God lead us to do, because we needed to take the risk of the test and, the results of the test or whatever it was. And
I'll just jump in too to say, your community seemed to mobilize around you a little bit. Actually, I remember when I came into Anchorage to be with Gwen, you guys had all sorts of stuff in the room. So they put us up in a little, I can't remember, it's called the Fisher House, right? And it's kind of like a Ronald McDonald House. I don't know if all the listeners would be familiar with that, but similar to like a Ronald McDonald House there in Anchorage. And when I got there, I was thinking, you were there with bare bones, but there were people that brought you clothes, they brought you snacks, people were bringing you things at the hospital. And so I just saw a real outpouring of love. And it was like, oh, I have a friend who has a friend who has a friend, and they know somebody that there's a young mom with these babies there in Anchorage that needs some stuff. So people just started showing up with, coffee and different things.
And it was funny because our story, and I still don't know exactly who shared it and how it shared, but our story did really spread like wildfire across a lot of just Alaska local groups and then just Christian groups. Because I remember one need that we had that somehow was overlooked was we needed a phone charger. And I guess the other thing is Jed did make it up to the military, let Jed go. He was able to leave the boat and then meet me and Sawyer and Gwen at the PICU. So we were not there alone. Oh, and the other thing that I guess I forgot to mention is that when we found out that Sawyer was going to need to be life flighted, I was able to call Jed and tell him, hey, they're going to have to life flight our baby. Here's what's going on. We're going to be in Anchorage in, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And Jed actually was able to come join us. The Coast Guard again released him to come up and be with us. So we weren't having to deal with all of the rest of everything that was to come alone. And then you, Mom, actually, you came up within a couple days too. So really there was a few of us up there, but the crazy thing that also ended up happening was, our story really spread. And one of the needs that we had shared was we needed a phone charger because Jed has somehow left without a phone charger. I had left without a phone charger. So neither of us had phone chargers. And people were so willing and happy to help. I think I remember Jed and we just kept laughing because, the first person that someone brought us a phone charger to the hospital. And then, a couple hours later, another person shows up. A nurse brings back a phone charger. She's like, hey, someone dropped this off for you at the desk. So we have another phone charger. And we're like, oh, good. Now we both have one. And then it was like, there was like 7 phone chargers. So someone had told someone that we needed a phone charger. Somehow there was a list of, hey, they need these things. Because we had packed a few things, but we had packed to be in the hospital for 2 nights. And then it became, 3.5 weeks in Anchorage. So we really didn't have a ton. There ended up being like a few needs that we had. And so we shared and posted and said, hey, we need these things. And we just ended up with like 7 phone chargers. And it got to the point where Jed and I are like looking at each other like, okay, we don't need this many. Like we need to start giving these back. And we're like, do we like track them down and give them their charger back? Do we just keep it? What do we do? And, it was really funny. There was people who brought clothes, bags of clothes, hand-me-down clothes from their kids for Gwen to wear. People brought clothes for me that I could nurse in because they knew that Sawyer was still so little. People brought clothes for Jed. People brought us socks. People brought us food. We had people sending us just gift cards for food. Really, people did really rally around us and support us in Anchorage. And then even back in Kodiak, like I said, we knew one person. And we had told when I had gotten on that life flight, I had asked her, hey, can you go back to the hotel and pick up the dog for tonight? I can figure out boarding him somewhere later, but I obviously can't take the dog on the life flight. And it's the last thing on my mind to deal with right now. So can you go deal with the dog? And she had said, yes, I can deal with the dog, but I'm going out of town soon. So she had posted on Facebook asking and explaining our story again and saying, hey, is there anyone who would take this family's dog until they're back? And multiple people volunteered to take our dog. And so by the time we got back, everyone knew our story. And it was funny because we were trying out churches when we returned to Kodiak, and people would ask when we got there, and we would say, oh, well, technically like a month and a half ago, but we've been kind of gone. And then now we're back. And we would start to say, we went to Anchorage because our baby was sick, and they would fill in the rest of the story because everyone just knew. And, as we were going to these churches, it was like, oh, that went across our prayer chain. And, oh, that came into my email. Oh, I heard about that. And it was absolutely insane because by the time we got back, we realized that basically every Christian person on the entire island had heard our story and had been praying for us for the past month. And so that was really our first glimpse into the community there in Alaska, which was everything and more than it sounds.
And it's so funny because it was funny when we went to the airport because we went to the airport together and went through security together. And then I separated from you guys to go on a plane back to Oregon, and you guys had to get on a plane to Kodiak. So we were going at the same time. And what was so funny was packing the suitcases because you came on a life flight with just a few things. And then so many people brought you things, and you had to then sort through it and get it back and decide what you were taking back to Kodiak with you and what was getting donated for the next family, because this happens from time to time in Alaska. So you guys were able to pay it forward and leave things for the next family that would need stuff too. So that was kind of fun. So that was a time of your life that was very memorable, and you were able to really hear God's voice and learn what it meant to listen to God and then act on what he told you. And so it's been fun watching you. It wasn't fun, that situation, right? But it was fun to see the growth and the dependence on God. And then he has shown you over and over through a lot of circumstances how he is faithful. And recently, you guys have gotten a new station. So you've moved from Kodiak to Iowa. So you'll need to tell everyone who's listening about, just real quick about your adventure. How long did that take to move from Kodiak?
So I wouldn't even consider us completely moved yet, since I'm sitting in an empty house right now, waiting for my household goods to be brought, thanks to the military taking their sweet time with that.
Right. And so this is just picturing this. I'm in my closet in one room recording, and I'm on Zoom with Emma, who's sitting in an absolutely empty house, completely on the floor, empty, on the carpet, with nothing on the windows, nothing on the, no chair.
So we started our cross country move in the middle of May, and here it is, almost July. We have yet to see our stuff yet. So we've been moving for quite some time. We took a boat from Kodiak, Alaska. It goes all the way down the coastline from Alaska all the way down to Washington. So that took about 6.5 days. So we did that, and then stopped in Oregon to visit family for about a week, and then continued driving cross country all the way out to your house in Tennessee for about a week. Of course, driving cross country took about a week. So then about a week across country, a week in Tennessee, and then about a day to drive up here to Iowa. And then we've just been sitting in our wonderfully empty house for about 2 weeks now, just waiting for the movers to bring us our stuff so that we can really settle in here in Iowa. And the kids did happen to get sick on this road trip. We had some colds a few days ago, and I definitely thought of Sawyer's story and how we had just moved and then got sick. And I thought it was interesting that, again, here we are, we just moved to Iowa and then everyone got sick. And so that was an interesting flashback the other day that I happened to notice.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story. And it was fun to get to talk to you in this different way. I mean, we talk all the time, but this is something that is a different way to do it. And it's fun to be able to share your stories with everybody who's listening. And if they want to find you on Instagram, your Instagram handle is wherever is home.
Yeah. Yep. That's it, because we move a lot. So that's where that came from. So hopefully my next post will be us with stuff. So we'll just keep praying for that one.
Very good. Very good. Well, Emma, I would just be so honored if you would close us out in prayer today.
All right. That sounds good. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to come to you in Jesus' name. And God, I pray for anyone who may be listening right now. And I pray that you would help us, God, to hear your voice, Lord. And God, I'm thinking especially of those who have children who may be medically fragile, Lord, or, God, just simply as mothers, as we parent our kids in our world today, Lord, I pray that you would help us be advocates, Lord, for what is best for them, God. I pray that you would give us discernment in knowing what that is, God. I pray that you would just keep these children safe, Lord. We know that they're in the palm of your hand, Lord. I pray that you would give us as mothers peace and comfort in knowing that you love them, God, more than we ever can and ever will, Lord. So I pray that you would just continue to watch over each and every child of each and every mother who's listening here today, God. And God, I want to thank you for the times that I know you have spoken to me, and for your hand of protection over Sawyer, over his life, Lord, not just his early days, God, but every day since then, God. I thank you for just keeping him safe, Lord. And I pray that you would just go before him and every other child, Lord, that's mother is listening here today, Lord, in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true.